Hello dear viewers of UzReport World, you are watching interview program. Today's topic of discussion is supply chain management and microchip crisis. And our guest today is Sokhibkhon Salikhov. Hi Sokhibkhon, thank you for joining us today. We are familiar with your extensive work in the supply chain management and your reputation as an industry expert. We know also you have contributed to various international projects, especially in the automotive industry, and your efforts during COVID-19 pandemic are also noteworthy. Your experience in foreign trade and your time studying and living in the United States have also been impressive. Could you please share more about yourself and your background?
Sure, Asad. Well, first of all, thank you very much for having me, for inviting to this program. And thank you very much for the grandiose introduction as well. Like, I really appreciate this. But if I can expand on whatever you said before, I would personally say I was born and raised in Tashkent. But at the same time, I can say professionally that I was born and raised in the supply chain management industry. So firstly, my professional chapter started with a foreign trade company in Uzbekistan, Sanat Expert, where I used to be a bridge between Uzbek local suppliers and the foreign buyers. So I was involved in a global sourcing, global kind of supply chain industry as a whole. I was working with different products, including chemical products, automobile, textiles, electronics. I can count a lot, like about 10 products that I've managed to export to the different industries. And this experience of global supply chain really helped me to prepare for the future challenge to come. As the next chapter in my kind of professional career, I worked in international projects. Firstly, it was a big name kind of French company, Peugeot Citroën. In Uzbekistan, it was a period of investment, kind of big boom in Uzbekistan between the period of 2016 and 20. And I was quite lucky enough to be involved in this project. So, for example, in the Peugeot Citroën, I was a member of a 30-people company because it was a startup framework. It was a greenfield project, we call this. And I was involved in different supply chain challenges, something like ranging from a drafting agency documents, for example, to the new product development, at the same time business expansion from a supply chain perspective. And this experience really helped me to build my kind of experience in the automotive industry, to introduce myself and to move to the next chapter where I worked in the Volkswagen. Again, it was a kind of very challenging period of time because it was 2020, COVID. For most of the professionals, for some I would say, the COVID-19 was a setback. But for me, it was a great experience, great challenging experience where I learned a lot. I'm really grateful for this kind of part of my career because I've acquired new people, network of people, professionals, experience, and knowledge that I still use as an expert now. And thereafter, I found myself in a supply chain MBA now. I'm an MBA candidate in one of the notable universities in the world, first of all, and in the United States as well, in the University of Wisconsin Medicine, in a business school. University of Wisconsin Medicine is called to be the public Ivy League among the top 10 kind of universities, academic institutions in United States. And there I'm learning a lot with a great people, professional network of different MBAs. And also we have a good academic board here of teachers, lecturers who are trying to share their knowledge, industry experience as well. So last summer, for example, it's kind of about the United States as a whole. Last summer, I've interned at the Schneider Electric, the largest company in the supply chain management. First in the ranking, according to the Gartner. There's a ranking of Gartner within the supply chain management to evaluate different companies in terms of their supply chain performance. So I worked there in logistics and distribution aspect, and I had a great time there as well. So as a whole, this is my kind of story in a nutshell.
Thank you. Let's turn to the main topic of our discussion. Recently, global supply chain management has encountered very significant challenges, particularly with microchips in automotive industry during COVID-19 period. Could you please, Mr. Sokhibkhon, elaborate on this issue?
Actually, it's a great question. Great question is part of my kind of commitment as a supply chain manager, and plus I'm trying to learn more from an industry expert on this kind of subject. But what I can say here, COVID-19 really brought to the light the fragile nature of supply chain management within the automotive industry, first of all, especially when it comes to the semiconductor sourcing. if I tell more about the COVID-19 and semiconductor issue, like we need to look at the chronological order of what happened to be there. Like in 2020, first quarter, World Health Organization announced it officially the pandemic situation, isn't it? Yes, and most of the companies at that time tried to curtail their projections, to shorten their expectations to 2020 for the remaining period. And the same happened to be with the automotive industry. From a best case scenario, they move it back to the worst case scenario. Well, in terms of the sales, and what I can tell about the supply chain management in automotive industry, they are very conventional, very traditional, especially when it comes to the procurement, when it comes to the supply chain sourcing, and this conventional approach forced the industrial planners, procurement specialists to reduce the projection of sales at the same time to reduce the contractual volumes, especially when it comes to the semiconductors. But when we look at again at the chronological order in the mid of 2020, people started to buy a lot, especially when it comes to Uzbek market. For example, we can see that they spend a lot on the big purchases of houses. Yes, isn't it? And in that period, we have observed about the 10 to 15% increase in the house prices. The same happened to be in the automotive industry. People tried to buy more cars. Even so, no one expected this, but people wanted to commute more within their individual kind of space, I would say, and within the local geography, because they couldn't like be a tourist at that time. And that increased the demand for the cars. Plus, people were afraid of a public space, like public transportation was not popular at that time because of COVID again. So at that time, when the planners and procurement specialists wanted to get back and modify their kind of expectation for the remaining half of the year, they couldn't get enough capacity because this capacity was already kind of reserved by other industry players, electronic players, like electronic producers, for example. And when we compare electronics and automotive industry from a supply chain perspective, again, like electronics is more about responsiveness, while the automobile industry is more about the efficiency and cost management. Who wins usually in this kind of situation? For sure, responsiveness. So responsiveness won, automotive industry, electronic kind of players get the most capacity in that year in 2020. That led to the catastrophe, to the nightmare of most of the automotive industry companies. For example, if we see the stock prices at that time, GM, let's say North American companies, General Motors or Ford, lost, I would say, the half of their market structure, market capitalization during that period of time. Even the biggest players like Toyota, for example, in Asian market, they lost about 20 to 30% of their kind of market stocks. And also it led to the layoffs, to the different problems, operational problems, quality problems in this industry. So according to the open source, for example, if I tell the numbers, in 2021 only, there was a loss about the 210 billion of USD, so-called opportunity cost for the industry players in automotive market.
So my next question, a little bit from the politics. How do you think geopolitical factors might continue to affect the global microchip supply chains? And additionally, could you please suggest the ways to mitigate these risks?
Very good question, to be honest, and it's very topical still in current kind of market and geopolitical structure. If I start this kind of discussion, firstly, I need to start nowadays geopolitics is very different. Like different nations, especially big name kind of nations, are having the struggles, tensions between each other. And there's a kind of concepts appearing nowadays, so-called friendshoring, nearshoring, especially it relates to the supply chain management system of the countries. If I tell specifically more about the Russia and the Ukraine war and supply chain within the microchip kind of level, then I can tell that, yeah, for sure, Russia and Ukraine are not the kind of headliners or the forefront runners of technologies or R&D technologies. But they possess a lot of natural resources that are main component of semiconductor. For example, Ukraine produces a lot of neon gases. And there are some companies called InGas or Cryoin in the Ukraine market which produces this neon gas, use it to laser produce, again, microchips. that will improve the performance of those microchips, longevity. So it's really important to have this gas. At the same time, when I tell more about Russia, for example, Russia, as you know, have a lot of resources for metals, for ferrous metals, for earth metals, and at that time, they have a kind of sanctions to export those products, like palladium, for example, or platinum-like metals are mainly used in the microchip production, and they are mainly produced in Russia as well. But apart from this, icing on the cake, I would say, there's a problem, well, existing at that time, still exists nowadays, with the sources of microchips and its geography. Mainly in 2020, the geography or the production of microchips was around the Asian markets, with such countries and nations like Taiwan, South Korea, Japan, and China as well. And no kind of developed nation like North American continents, for example, or European continents possess a good kind of capacity of production for the microchip. And interestingly, you know, if you look back to the history, microchip was firstly produced in the United States in 1874, I think, was a Bell Technology company involved as well. But nowadays, they are only, well, according to the open data, they're only part of a 10% of production, of global production. I mean, United States. So there is a big shift now, and the Asian market is very dominating with such companies like Taiwanese TSMC, UMC. There's Samsung as well from South Korea. There are SMIC from China that are kind of try to lead the production, and they have a good economies of scale as well because of because of historical contracts. But what those nations are doing now, especially developed one, for example, in the United States, there are kind of one bill accepted already, and President administration of Biden, for example, they're having so-called Biden Chips and Science Act. It's a very important act that tries to develop different industries within the United States, including semiconductor. And the investment within this kind of act is about 825 billion USD. So it's kind of big investment, and such companies in the United States like Micron, Texas Instrument, Applied Materials, producers of microchips as well, they are kind of favoring out of this. The United States is building a good ecosystem nowadays within their boundaries. We can see the tendency of NVIDIA, for example. NVIDIA's stocks is increasing now drastically. NVIDIA is they are not producers of semiconductors, but they're outsourcers of semiconductors. With such tendency, with the United States kind of government intervention of this industry, NVIDIA is also kind of favoring out of this situation because they have a closed supplies. They have a closed, stable supplies, and they don't have a kind of other, I would say, noises of political problems around the world because they can rely on their own American-produced semiconductors. What I can suggest as a whole, from a supply chain perspective, not being a political kind of expert, I'm not a political expert for sure, but from a supply chain perspective, firstly, diversification. The so-called diversification is important, especially geographical diversification is very important. Plus, it's important to increase the supplier base, so it's kind of company diversification. Flexible manufacturing. It's important to use different technologies to be more flexible in the industry. Plus, we can use automation and AI. Buzzwords, AI especially nowadays. But AI is really important. I would say I'm seeing the great value in AI. Utilizing this kind of technology can help the company to build the transparency, visibility, and also to manage the risk potentially. For example, even there are some tools available in the market. If you cannot develop AI, prepare the AI in the market, like Forekites. Forekites is providing visibility to the company with the use of AI partially and in their business model. Also, government support is really important. We are seeing this now. We have seen it before. If I tell about more government support, for example, China's EV market is the best example. The government supported through the monetary and non-monetary techniques the development of EV technologies, EV production in China. And nowadays, what we are seeing is BYD is a main leader of sales in the world. So the same can happen with the microchips. The government should intervene, should invest in the production, and should help the local kind of producer to protect their IP, first of all, intellectual property. And most of the European continents and North American continents are doing this now.
So during COVID-19 pandemic, many automotive companies faced microchip shortages. So my next question comes from your experience in Volkswagen Uzbekistan. What kind of specific strategies were employed at this company to address the microchip shortages and ensure a steady supply of ambulances during the pandemic?
Specific at the same time, broad question, to be honest. If I tell more about my experience in Volkswagen, for example, so I need to tell from a business perspective how we operated in Volkswagen. As a producer of cars, we used to have a business model, so-called, with a production of SKD and FPUs. Like it means semi knock it down and fully built unit cars. So it was kind of initial stage of our operation. In each car there are about 1,000 to 3,000 semiconductors. So it's a lot per car. At that time we had a lot of problem, especially when it comes to the household kind of demand for Volkswagen cars. But at the same time, the COVID situation created a significant challenge in the medical field as well. For example, we had the urgent need for ambulances that could not be met due to the shortage initially, but we managed to do this through the help of supply chain framework, government intervention. If I expand on this, for example, I managed the supply chain resilience, and the team, and the company as a whole introduced numerous innovations to tackle challenge from the COVID-19 pandemic situation. For example, we introduced and used it a lot advanced analytics for demand forecasting, Internet of Technologies, Internet of IoT, it's called IoT technologies for real-time tracking of cars, vehicles in a route. We also enhanced the collaboration with retailers, with suppliers, using digital platforms in-house built. That was really important for us. Plus, apart from this, we used the traditional kind of supply chain methods of multiple sourcing strategies. We've collaborated with the Uzbek government to establish new standards for the car quality and the fuel quality management as well. That was important to source those cars in Uzbekistan. So as a result of this kind of combination of efforts, we've successfully introduced Volkswagen A-type ambulance cars into the Uzbek market and overcame the supply chain problems as a whole.
We are living in the 21st century, and as you know, technology is developing year by year. So how do you think that these emerging technologies can contribute to enhance the resilience and transparency of microchip supply chains?
It's kind of there is a topic, open question that most of the industry specialists are still dealing with. There are different methods, recommendation in the market available, but from my perspective, there are kind of main four methods, I would say. Or if I count this, for example, blockchain is important. AI is very important. I would also prefer to use digital twins, so-called kind of concept in supply chain management. And as a last step, I would also stick with traditional supply chain kind of techniques that are kind of in combination, are potential solution to the problem existing in microchip supply chain disruption. I really believe that with the use of this, we can kind of transform the whole automotive industry. For example, if I tell about the blockchain system, firstly, the demand for microchip is rising for sure. Like according to the figures, according to the consumption of people, and there is a risk of, because of this, there is a risk of potential fraud or counterfeiting the product that also increases and complicates the supply chain kind of problems as a whole. So blockchain technology, for example, can help to increase the transparency and tackle counterfeiting and ensure security within the industry. There are kind of different tools, for example, existent in the market. Let's say DocTrace. DocTrace is one of the main tools that help to deal with such kind of situation. And secondly, if I expand on AI, for example, AI will play a critical role in developing a supply chain mapping, visibility, again, transparency within the different tiers within supply chain management. Especially, it's very relevant to the automotive industry. Automotive industry is built traditionally with multiple tiers, like it's mainly 3 tiers. It's really hard to operate within those tiers and to understand the problem existence. There's information gap, but AI will help because AI as a whole is built in a large language models that kind of consumes a lot of information, produces a lot of feedbacks and results. So it's really important to use AI in a supply chain management as well. And plus, AI can help the companies to streamline their daily operations, from creating a bill of lading, for example, invoices, or communicating on a daily basis with various suppliers, for sure. Apart from this, creation of digital twins is not very famous, but I mean, but industry experts know this about digital twins. Digital twin can help to create the digital replicas of entire supply chain, including suppliers, distribution kind of network, manufacturer, or whatever is kind of existing in those supply chain nodes. And it also creates good visibility and good simulation and good understanding of the problem existing within the supply chain network, and help the company to early identify vulnerabilities or potential disruptions. Or in addition to this, I can add more kind of very pragmatic approach of stockpiling, scenario planning, or even academic partnership with different R&D institutions, think tanks. It will be helpful to deal with the supply chain problems for sure. So kind of innovative and traditional approaches are very important for secure and efficient microchip supply chain as a whole.
Well, that was my last question. Thank you for your answers. It was a great pleasure to talk with you.
Thank you, Asadbey. Thank you for having me. Thank you for inviting, and good luck with your program in the future. Thank you very much.